Hello everybody. Welcome. It's early in the morning and the power's out. Incredible winds were blowing and blowing, but it's relatively calm now. We who live in urban houses depend upon the wires for almost everything. In the place where I live, thankfully I have a gas stove. But in the place where my father lived, the stove is electric, which means I cannot cook food. The moon, I think, is just past full. And I'm walking to soothe my mind. When we are speaking, there's a sense of security in making the noises. Each sound is true, a fact. We make it, we hear it, we know it. But there's a deeper manifold of more important truths. The truths of our bodies and their rhythms in nature. When I make these recordings, of course, I'm thinking of an audience and so on. And concerned, as any creative person usually is, to try to make something beautiful or good. But I'm also talking with myself and wandering an array of paths in my consciousness. And when I'm sensitive to it, I can feel that I'm traversing routes. And this is a fundamental animalian thing. To follow routes. Once in a terrible storm long ago, I decided to go and find the spot on which I was conceived, and I had some information to help me. But I don't know if I would have ever done that unless I knew about the salmon. I believed, and I've always believed, that there's a living library here of anciently conserved intelligences and symbiotic relationships. And long ago, the humans did not merely read the library, they were aware that they were writing in it. But this library isn't made of words. It's made of relationships. And even those words are ridiculous. Because they communicate nothing of what they point at. The family of life on earth is actually a family. It's not metaphoric. In a way, from a perspective different than we're inclined to take, it's just one being here. Imagine that our inclination was to see the unity in precedence to the apparent distinction, such that we always saw the unity first in everything we looked at, rather than beginning at the tips of the fingers of an animal us moderns have nearly refused to imagine. Of course, we're crippled. Our scripting, the languages, in this late stage of the representational development of human cognition, and not merely that development, but which purposes were selected for that development to serve. And these are mostly dire purposes today. Purposes that subtract from us many of the senses and potentials and dreams that live as nascent seeds in the deepest part of us. And that part is estranged primarily from language. And some few persons, sometimes, maybe all of us a little bit, we find some way to bridge that gap between the unspeakable, not as something horrific, but as something holy, and the waking world. The world where concepts and language largely deceive us. Now look, we're capable of doing something else with our minds and our words, but either we have to resist the strange intrusions of modernity, the way it speaks and frames the world to us. These modern languages like English, truly the only verbal language I know. And I love English and I love language. But it conceals many pathogens. And think if we're capable of thinking about this at all, and we do much better in groups, because once we have the necessary agreements to see and learn together about all of these matters, then when that becomes our mission, and it's part of my mission here, though you are far away, then the possibility of transforming our relationships with these ideas, concepts, world models, frameworks, words, can be brought can be sifted free of many of the pathogens they must otherwise impose upon us, even if we resist, because we are social creatures and our resistances will almost always be of the form that merely reissues another array of pathogens, you see. Unless we have very careful and wise agreements about language and concepts and ideas and theories and models and research and findings, largely the pathogens will have their way with our minds, and certainly with our societies, our courtrooms, our schools, our universities. They're not merely fundamentally vulnerable, they've been almost entirely captured. Right? This is way beyond vulnerability. But as I began to walk and think and reflect, what was in my heart was the utter incapacity of speaking to capture experience. Now we can enchant each other with language, and I can enchant myself with language. In fact, language is enchanting. And there are incredible feats that some of us can perform. But those ones who perform those feats, it's as if they have become an organ of many. And so it is as if the feelings of the people everywhere, and particularly in places dear or to us or physically close, then acts of great beauty are possible with speaking. But these, we must admit, are rare. And largely the purview of poets or musicians or writers. Most of the language we find ourselves subjected to is debilitating. And it's a tragedy that our children must take their cues. You know, In the beginning, the children are extremely skeptical about the speaking thing. Most of them. They're fascinated by it. But they're also very skeptical. They can see that the way that the adults think during speaking is not the same way the adults think and feel when no speaking is going on. And we're just relating with each other physically, with our bodies and eyes and gazes and faces and hands. That physical relation. It's primordial. And the intelligences in our bodies are primordial. And they sense and know in a way that's not linguistic. It's fundamentally relational, as if each one of these senses, our organs, our cells, they are heroic members of a unity. Yes, the unity of my body, but the unity of the entire history and future of life on Earth. Which comes first, my body or the unity it comes from? Which has precedence, my body or my fingertip? And the answer to that is not a binary answer. It's not, my body has precedence. Near the tip of the finger has precedence. You see? Only if we zoom out do we see the body. If we're gazing at the tip of the finger or our eye is in our fingertip, then the tip of the finger seems the most important thing. And this is how the humans are in nature. But our organs, our cells, the bacteria we inherit from the world, the viruses, all these things, all these beings, you see, clouds of trillions of them, walking around wearing shoes and having no idea in their minds what it might be or become that they are made to do and to do for, and all the myriad things they are made to be and to become are lost to us in modern language. There's no record of them. Nearly no one says, child of humans, turn that lens over. Be the unity first. You are together, now come together, be together. And there are, representations of this, and look, the animals are doing it all the time. The schools of fish, the murmurations of birds. The clouds are doing it. The mountains are doing it. But the poor humans are lost in a maze of largely pathogenic language. And ideas of identity that cannot be true. It's not merely that these aren't good ideas, they're impossible ideas. And not in the good way. There's a break in the storm, and power is on in some places. I was actually looking forward to a walk in the darkness. Our bodies are not like antennas. It's the other way around. Antennas slightly resemble features of our bodies. But imagine if you had an antenna that could directly receive Imagine it's difficult to make words that don't fail me. This is the problem right now for me. Very difficult. Imagine you had an antenna, but what it received wasn't radio or television or cell signals. And isn't it bizarre that we chose that homonym? Of course, the reason it was chosen is because the towers are cell-like, right? They're little cells in networks, in a sense. But imagine that you had an antenna that received and wrote in the medium of the relational intelligences as a unity in the biosphere. Imagine you were capable not merely of reading that library, but of writing in it, and in fact, all of your behavior writes in the library, whether you're thinking you're doing this or not. And that sounds kind of grim, especially for we befuddled people. But our bodies synchronize with their relationships, and our minds drag us away from this into representations of what goes missing when we're dragged away into language and concepts and ideas. And even this one's dangerous, right? This is an idea. But our bodies are meant to participate in a vast network of intelligences that the humans have been staring at since the beginning of our species and have but fairly recently forgotten. And if there was a primary cause of that forgetting, it was the onset of machines. Earlier I spoke of the purposes under the aegis of which our languages develop, and the purposes of industry and war, of object commerce and banking, and even the purposes that wear the guise of religious purposes. for some reason, nearly all of these fields have been all but completely captured. And so they are the media in which the pathogenic propensities that are being expressed in us and these constructs our bodies are made for flight in 10 kinds of dimensions we've failed to imagine, and we're made of them. It's just our thinking is wrong. And our language encourages this error to propagate and invent new ways to blind us or deny us. Deep relation. Probably some wind in the mic. For some reason, this one street is pretty windy. We have all experienced events so profound in our lives that there's nothing we can say about them. It just won't work. The speech doesn't encompass the experience and its interiorities. And we have a word for this in English, maybe we have a few, but we call these visceral experiences. And we mean by that word what happens in our bodies. We humans are a very strange animal in the sense that our strangely developed brains make us vulnerable it's as if there's a number of gift/curse pairings in some kind of a flower of many of these, right? Where on this side, yes, we get the ability to manipulate symbols and to think and speak abstractly. In fact, as it turns out, it's very difficult for us to not speak abstractly because our language has become a webwork of abstractions. There's nothing in there. In Blackfoot, I'm told there's a rather beautiful sounding string of face noises that when translated into English, what you get is, of course, depending on who's translating it, But the simple derivation is just keep going forward. But in Blackfoot, the connotations are rich and deep. They come from the bison's ability to break through very difficult terrain or a vast bank of snow by moving its vast horns back and forth and weaving and breaking things. The male bison often cut a path through very deep snowdrifts that would trap and kill their herds. As you see in English, just keep going forward. You can embellish it and say, if things are difficult, just keep going forward. Right? Because there's some implication of that, I think, in the Blackfoot phrase. But this is empty compared to the image of the bison crashing through a huge snowdrift to save its people. It's not crashing through for the bison in the front. You see, the bison in the front, it's not, they see the unity first. Whereas we see, most of us, the self first. And it's unclear if a Blackfoot person would make such a declaration. For one thing, it's uncouth, but they would demonstrate this rather than state it. You see? A suggestion offers the chance for relationship. A declaration largely dominates or kills it. So language that is poetic in its use of metaphor and connotation is vastly more powerful than this abstract thing I'm doing now. And of course this is ironic. I'm doing the very thing that I'm speaking around. I'm using abstract language, but this is our language. And yes, it supports metaphor and analogy and so on. But they're not so native to us moderns anymore. And from what I've heard and learned of ancient languages, it was the other way around. It was literally the other polarity of the thing. And of course, it's a topology, It wasn't impossible to make declarations. But our declarative language has led to a bizarre problem with declarative thinking. instead of learning and seeing better each time we use our minds or words, it's very easy to succumb to the terrifying gravity of the other direction. This strange arrangement of fatty tissues inside our skulls is a flower of gifts and curses. But if we can't together escape its pathogenic aspects, then our bodies go unlistened to. We become deaf to their language. And this is terrifying. You could take a moment with me and feel your body. Just place your senses in yourself, in your physical self. In your hands and feet, your legs and hips, your thighs, your back, your shoulders, your neck, your head, your eyes, your mouth, your ears. Listen to that body with me. The languages our body knows make all of human speaking seem trite. We're touching inside us the very core of the universe. As if all the relationships that ever have been or will be are with us now. Is language that exciting? And the purposes of life, the origins of life, the future of life, this is what the conversation's actually about in our bodies. And those purposes have nearly nothing to do with what modern humans do. And that cannot continue. And that cannot be true or good except in the narrow confines and often lethal purposes for which we use our languages. and mind. I remember when I see the sky that is our home. And this little island here, this is our home. And the living beings here, their origins, relations, companioning, that is true. A droplet of that, a droplet of the essence of that would obliterate the things we think of as knowledge. The world is transcendently intelligent. Our bodies, and maybe someday, our minds as well. Thank you for joining me. I look forward to learning together again sometime soon. Bye-bye for now.